Chinese. No, you weren't in China.
No, I've never served in China, but for any diplomat, even though you don't deal with China, you follow Chinese developments and what happens there and what happens in your bilateral relations. Because I think the closest neighbor to us, and there are a lot of things which are happening. So we have always followed developments in China and the neighborhood all along.
And I just need I'm sorry to interrupt. I need a clarification. See, the secretary who was supposed to host the meeting is unfortunately held up. So I am the host now. I don't know how to throw the spotlight on the speaker. Does anyone have any idea on that?
I can help you. I can help you, Sujesh. Since I'm a co-host, I can help you. Not an issue.
Fine. Thank you. Thank you. Save me there.
Juniors are always helpful, Sujesh.
I know. I know what you mean, Ranjit. Hi, Chettiar. You're back from your farm or still in your farm, Chettiar?
All of it.
Okay.
City.
Hi, Chettiar.
So we just have a minute to go. The moment the meeting starts, I'll be muting everybody. All right. Yeah.
I think virtually you can have your malai, usual malai.
Yes. All right, I'm muting everybody. Those who want to speak can unmute themselves. Fine. Good evening, and this joint meeting of the Rotary Club of Madras South, Chennai Spotlight and Royapettah is called to order. The presidents are requested to call it themselves. Rotarian Jayanti, can we have the four-way test? Kindly unmute yourself.
Can I invite Devi Krishna to give the OFO?
Yeah, sure.
Devi, are there? Sujata?
I'll just unmute myself. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Hi. I'm just going to check if Devi is there. We have IPP Reema Sundar. If she can read the four-way test is also fine. I think they did join. Reema Sundar, are you there? Should I call her and her? Sorry about this.
But one of you can just read it.
Yeah, I will read it.
Yeah, read it.
Please.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
The four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and friendship, better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to welcome our speaker, Ambassador Ganapathi, IFS, to this meeting, the third meeting of the Rotary Club of Madras South, jointly hosted by Chennai Spotlight and Rotary Club of Royapettah. And welcome members of Chennai Spotlight and Royapettah, and my dear Southerners. I don't have much of an announcement except that our COVID relief is going to start tomorrow, and for the information of the other clubs here, we have embarked on a journey of helping people who have been laid down by the COVID, particularly the small businesses and the micro businesses and street vendors. So we have identified people who have suffered really badly and are in need of funds, and we are distributing funds to the tune of rupees 25,000 to up to 50,000 per person, which can help them come back to normalcy as soon as possible. And we have a budget of about 1.1 crore for this, and that kitty is still growing, and we hope to do about 1.5 crores of donation for this particular project alone. And it is being kickstarted tomorrow, and we are distributing a sum of rupees 14 lakh 9,500 tomorrow to about 80 beneficiaries. And can I have Rotary Sujata Panchu introduce the speaker, please? Or is there any other announcement to be made by any of the presidents? Sorry about that.
No, we just had a meeting yesterday, so it's okay.
All right. So Reggie, nothing. Fine. Okay. So Sujata Panchu, you can introduce the speaker.
Yeah, fine. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sujata Panju from Rotary Club of Chennai Spotlight. I'm truly privileged and honored to introduce the speaker for this evening. Thank you so much, Sujesh, President of Rotary Club of Chennai South, Madras South, and our own President, Jayanti Karthikeyan, and of course, Reggie from, Rotarian Reggie from Royapettah. This is an info that I would like to tell everyone. There are some non-Rotarians as well have joined in, I think, today. So, well, we all know that China has been dominating the news of late, especially for the past 3-4 months now. So I'm going to talk about that and more to listen about that from our own speaker. Well, China has dominated the news for the past few weeks, rather months, along with, of course, the coronavirus. The recent violent military clash in Ladakh has plunged India-China relations to a new low. India has banned more than 100 Chinese apps active in India on the grounds of security. I'm sure all of you know about it. At present, China enjoys economic, technological, and military superiority over India. China's GDP of $14 trillion far surpasses India's $3 trillion. India ought to narrow this gap to discourage China's expansionist tendencies. This evening, we are fortunate to have Ambassador M. Ganapathi, a former senior officer of the IFS, with us. He shall be discussing the future of India-China relations. 3 Rotary clubs, like I said, are holding this joint meeting: Madras South, Chennai Spotlight, and Royapettah. Ambassador Ganapathi did an MSc in chemistry from Madras University before joining the IFS in 1975. He has been India's ambassador in Kuwait and High Commissioner in Mauritius, also Consul General in Sydney. He has served the Indian Embassy in Moscow, London, Singapore, Belgrade, and Sofia. For 2 years, that is 2011 to 2012, he held the powerful post of Secretary in the West in the Ministry of External Affairs. He oversaw India's relations with Europe, Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean and Canada. Ambassador Ganapathi has a gift for clear, lucid speech and penetrating political analysis. We'll be looking forward to your wonderful speech and a lot of info. Looking forward to hear from you, Ambassador Ganapathi. And that is Sujata. Over to you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Over to you, Ganapathi sir. I'll make you a co-host.
Do I start?
Yes, sir, you can.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Rotarian Sujata, for the introduction. And I congratulate the 3 Rotary clubs for coming together today evening in what is now a new normal of this virtual meeting, so to say. Of course, I also congratulate the Rotary Club of Madras South on their Diamond Jubilee this year and wish them many more significant anniversaries. The topic of today's discussion, of course, is India-China relations, which is, contextual, not only from a bilateral perspective, from a larger, but from also a larger global outlook. The standoff which is being played out in the borders and the endgame which arises out of it will have its own relevance, not only for bilateral relations, but for Asia and the world. As we know, this is the year of the rat, according to Chinese zodiac. And the rat, of course, if not controlled, could spread disease and burrow underground to gnaw at your vitals. And this is what seemed to have happened with the virus emanating from Wuhan. And thereafter, what we have seen are the malefic effects on the India-China border. the world at large, and not India alone, is working hard to tackle the various challenges which have arisen from China, not only through the virus, but also through other effects which China has taken, actions which China has taken, both on the border with India and in the South China Sea and elsewhere. Interestingly, this is the 70th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between India and China. And again, interestingly, on the 1st of April this year, there were exchanges, warm exchange of messages between the various leaders, President Xi, our president, the prime ministers, and also the foreign ministers. We were supposed to have had 70 events to commemorate this very important anniversary. But of course, COVID did not allow that to happen. But what happened since April has put paid to all the efforts. Now, of course, we could ask whether the Wuhan spirit of the April 18 meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Xi Jinping and the Chennai Connect of the Mamallapuram meeting of October 2019 are as good as over. So this is an important question. Of course, while asking me to speak on this subject, Mr. Madhu posed a set of questions which I think will emanate from the listener. Also not look at another of Madhu's own quotes which he sent, where he said a doctor told a patient when asked about whether he knows when the COVID scourge will end, the doctor said, "I don't know, I'm not a journalist." And that is where we are. I think in today's world, everyone is a foreign policy expert, and there are enough armchair critics, analysts, warriors, and peacemakers. I will divide my talk into 4 subsects, which is very important in understanding what's happening. One would be China internal, the India-China relations, China's own external relations, and finally the future. When you look at China internal, it is on the cusp of major anniversaries. China is going to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Communist Party of China in July 2021. It will be celebrating the 100th anniversary of the foundation of the People's Liberation Army on 1st August 2027, the anniversary of the 100th of the establishment of the People's Republic of China on the 1st of October 2049. Of course, what they had pointed out, what China looks at is, it looks at a very important point in its own history, which is some 2,200 years ago, 221 BC, which is the founding of the Qin dynasty. And that dynasty links traditional China under a concept called the Tianjia, or under the heaven. Under this, the Chinese leaders see themselves as drawing their power from God, and all of the constituencies under China receiving the mandate from heaven, and those who are not under the direct suzerainty of China would look at the emperor as giving them munificence and beneficence. So one can easily see the connection between Tianjia and the current activities of China under its various borders. Today, of course, President Xi Jinping is the most powerful leader in China's history. He is the General Secretary of the Communist Party of China. He is the President of the People's Republic of China. He is the Chairman of the Central Military Commission. He is also the core and the wise leader. And if you look at the Constitution of China, which was amended after the 19th Party Congress, it brings in Marxism, Leninism, Mao Zedong thought, Deng Xiaoping's theory. The 4 represents the scientific development, and most importantly, it adds the Xi Jinping thought for a new era of socialism with special Chinese characteristics. And of course, the Constitution was also amended to not only restrict President Xi's term to 2 terms, as it's normally done, but he is literally the president for life. On President Xi assuming office after the 19th Party Congress and before, he overthrew Deng Xiaoping's approach of keeping a low profile, biding your time, and hiding your capability towards a more proactive and robust approach which seeks to promote China's core interests more forcefully with nationalism as its central plank. Xi has sought China's quote-unquote rightful place in a global order. He has also said, we will not allow anyone, any organization, or any political party at any time or in any form to separate any form of Chinese territory from China. Of course, this would reflect more importantly on Tibet and Taiwan, but does not dissociate itself on China's reassertion on its perceived land and maritime borders. The crucial phase is new era, and this has been used regularly to see China move from a moderately prosperous country by 2021 towards a developed country politically, economically, militarily by 1949. Of course, there has been a slight setback through the COVID and other developments as we have seen. Now, the fracas in Ladakh, or if we can call it the problems in Ladakh, can be seen against this background. Now, why did it happen? Many could say it could be due to the internal developments within China. Many have tried to prophesize that Xi Jinping is in trouble. I think that I would not believe, because in a country as communist China, anyone who controls the systems of law and order and security apparatus is strong enough, and Xi controls these two. So his position is not in danger at all. And the standing committee of the Chinese Politburo, all the 7 members have not raised their voice against Xi. Was it because of the developments in Hong Kong? Possibly, yes. Possibly because of Xinjiang. The Belt and Road Initiative is an issue. Taiwan, of course, definitely. The new president of Taiwan has been very strong and robust in putting forth and in emphasizing that Taiwan is an independent country and China cannot, and it would owe no allegiance to China, despite China calling into order its one country, two systems. And of course, the problem of COVID, there's been a lot of pressure on China from doctoring the figures of COVID, its origin, and also trying to subserve its interests through the WHO. So what happens? Even though India recognized the People's Republic of China on 1st January 1950 and established diplomatic relations, as I said, on April 1, 1950. Despite that, China took relations for granted. The takeover of Aksai Chin in the early 50s and building of roads in that area, and the heated conversations with Chinese leaders and others, particularly the Soviet leaders, on China's approach towards India should be an indicator of the things to come. After the takeover of Tibet in the early 1950s, Mao had said that if Tibet were to be the palm of the hand, then the 5 fingers were Ladakh, Nepal, Sikkim, Bhutan, and what they call as South Tibet. Then it was called Nepal as Indian territory, and it is a state. It's a state of the Indian Union, Arunachal Pradesh. Interestingly, India and China were also the co-authors of the Panchashil, which in 1954 said that both sides, that is India and China, would show mutual respect for each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty. They would have mutual non-aggression, mutual non-interference in each other's internal affairs, equality and mutual benefit, and peaceful coexistence. Despite this, in 1954, we had Premier Chow En-lai's letters to Pandit Nehru, claiming a lot of territory of Ladakh, which was Aksai Chin, as Chinese territory. And in his reply, interestingly, Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru said that if you go by what Premier Chow had said, then the Chinese territory will extend up to the river Ganges on the plains. So you could see that China was an expansionist power all along, despite its profession of peaceful coexistence and trying to see itself as a third world country with no expansionist ambitions. So the development or the preparations for military action were seen in 1959, and then you saw the 1962 war. Now, what were the main reasons for this? Of course, in the conversation between Khrushchev and Mao, you could see that China had wanted to send or teach India a lesson. Khrushchev had pleaded with Mao and others that treat Nehru with respect. But Mao had said, no, we see Nehru behaving too cockily. After the 62 war, the president of China, Liu Shaoqi, had told Felix von der Neike, we wanted to bring down Nehru's arrogance and his illusions of grandeur, and we'll continue to teach and teach and teach India a lesson. So again, this was also a very interesting point if you look at it. Then, of course, that is where we look at the similarities of 1962 and what happened in May of 2020. I'm sure many of you would have read Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel's letter of November 7, 1950 to Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, wherein Sardar Patel has expressed grave misgivings on the real intentions of Mao Zedong and China. It said that Chinese feelings indicate, though that we may see ourselves as friends of China, China does not see itself as a friend of India. So the Chinese attack, according to the Chinese leaders, was to teach India a lesson, as I said, and what the Chinese leaders had told, Mao had told the Nepalese leaders, was that the major problem between India and China was not the McMahon line, but the Tibetan question. And John Loy had told Henry Kissinger in 1973 that the conflict between India and China took place because Nehru was getting cocky, as I said. Now, China, of course, claims its borders as existed during the Qing dynasty from 1644 to 1911. And China does not recognize the Anglo-Tibetan Treaty of 1914, which had drawn the Johnson Line as the border between India and Tibet. In, of course, 1950s, China had moved the Johnson Line towards what they call as the MacArthur line, which is further west and brings MacArthur-MacDonald line, which brings Tibet, the Indo-Tibetan border from the Johnson Line more towards west, towards where it currently is. We, of course, have boundary differences, as China claims, around 90,000 square kilometers of territory in Arunachal Pradesh and 38,000 square kilometers of territory in Jammu and Kashmir, which is occupied. And of course, another 5,000 odd square kilometers in what is the Shaksam Valley, which was ceded by Pakistan to China in 1963. Now, if you look at it, we have had various mechanisms for settling the boundary. For the first time in 1959, Premier Zhao had brought in the actual line, he had said the line under actual control of the two countries in his letter to Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru in 1959. Till then and thereafter, it was always the India-Tibet border. And since after 1962, diplomatic relations were broken, and relations came back on an even keel in 1988 through the visit of Rajiv Gandhi. And Deng Xiaoping had then told Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi that let us keep our differences aside and let us move ahead on other aspects of our relationship. We have had since then, in 1993, since there was no movement on the discussion front, agreement on maintenance of peace and tranquility along the line of actual control. This is the first time when we had formally codified the word line of actual control in any document between India and China, which said that till the boundary is settled through peaceful, friendly consultations, the two sides shall strictly control and respect and observe the line of actual control. Thereafter, in 1996, there was an agreement on confidence-building measures in the military field along the line of actual control, which had brought in certain additional constraints in the size and nature of military exercises between the two countries, that they would not open fire within 2 kilometers of the line of actual control. And that is why the problem arose in June 15 on the Galwan border, when despite being armed, our soldiers did not open fire, and China went to barbarian extent to beat up our soldiers, where we lost 20 of our soldiers. And in 2003, we had a declaration on principles for relations and comprehensive cooperation. And for the first time there, we appointed special representatives. In 2005, there was an agreement on political parameters and guiding principles for settlement of the India-China boundary question, which had, in one of the articles, Article 10, talked of the settled inhabitants in the border, which for all intents and purposes shows Arunachal Pradesh as Indian territory. That is how it should be. And of course, thereafter we had working mechanism on border affairs, setting of military, border military meeting points, and in 2011, a working mechanism for coordination and consultation on India-China border affairs. Why I bring all this in is, despite having these 5 or 6 agreements, besides a hotline between the military commanders, China, regretfully, has not been recognizing or respecting any of these agreements, which is where we had the Sumdrong-Chu standoff in 1986. We had the Nathula issue, and the recent issue starting from May, when China moved towards Galwan into beyond the line of actual control, which is what we call as the 1.5 kilometer, if we can use as the no man's land. And since then, since June 15, when we had this unfortunate confrontation between the two militaries, which led to Indian loss of lives of our soldiers, we are very confident and sure that there has been more, if not an equal amount of Chinese soldiers' losses. Of course, China doesn't announce these publicly for a loss of face of what it calls as a military with superior strength of the 21st century. And after that period, we have had any number of meetings between our commanders in the border area. We have had 3 meetings of the working mechanism. We had conversation between Foreign Minister, External Affairs Minister Jaishankar and Foreign Minister Wang Yi, and also the conversation between our special representatives of the 2 countries, between Special Representative Ajit Doval and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. So this is where we are. Have we had disengagement, de-escalation, and movement back? I think, according to, I won't go by what, and I would request all of us not to go by what we read in the media or what we see as commanders. We would, or what we see as analysts and critiques, we would go by what the government says and what the military commanders on ground say. Yes, there has been disengagement in the areas of Galwan, which is patrolling point 15, in the Gogra and Hot Spring areas of patrolling point 17 and 21A. There has been certain issue in the Pangong Sho area, where we see the entire spur of patrolling point 1 to 8 as under the Indian side of the line of control. The Chinese claim their line of control extending to from 4 to 8, and they have of course set up additional infrastructure there, and these are issues which are being under discussion in the Pangong Cho. Now, has there been de-escalation to a certain extent? Yes. Has there been a status quo ante restored? I think the commanders are speaking on it, and the Lieutenant General, the Corps Commander of the 17th Corps, Lieutenant General Joshi, has clearly said that till we see a status quo ante, we would not rest, we would not move our troops back. One of the problems which has arisen is, of course, we don't have development of infrastructure in this area. Many say that one of the reasons could have been the Dabuk, Shiok, Daulat Beg, Oldie roads infrastructure which we have been developing. Of course, after these developments, incidents of May to June, the government has given the green flag for expeditious development of infrastructure in the India-China border areas. A quick run-up of the external areas. China, of course, has maritime issues with 7 countries and Taiwan. It has problems with Bhutan, and Bhutan has I mean, there are two areas in the northern area of Bhutan, which it claims as its own territory. It is at Pasarlung and I think Jasamlung, and Jakarlung and Pasamlung areas. And then, of course, you have the Doklam, which the Indian Army was able to push back the Chinese troops beyond where they had moved in. The recent claim of China has been on the Sakteng environmental area, the wildlife area. And I think what China has said is if Bhutan were to compromise and give up its claim on the western area of the Bhutan-China border, it would sort of renounce its claims on the northern area of Bhutan. For us, that is would be a major security threat, because Doklam, if Bhutan gives up Doklam, it would just be a couple of kilometers away from the tiny Chicken's Neck corridor, the Siliguri corridor. Similarly, on the other area, if China were to get the Sakteng area, it would pose a direct threat to Tawang. Of course, Nepal has been in the news. If there are questions on that, I'll answer it. I think the Indian-Nepal border. Where does it leave us for the future? I think one of the issues has been political. I think this is a major setback to, as I said, the Wuhan spirit and the Chennai Connect. Economic, the trade figures for 2019-20, overall trade figure was around $81 billion, of which imports into India was around $65 billion and exports $16 billion, and a negative trade imbalance of around $48 billion in China's favor. And of course, people could say in the short term, our economic leverage may not be substantial, but to think that it is zero would be a gross error. And that is where we see that we have the ability to hurt China where it is. Around 106 apps have been banned and served notices. And it has been a wake-up call for us, the Galwan area. And we can say that the infrastructure and the power projects would be an area where we can put China on notice. And I think we have also, as somebody said, the Brahmastra would be the 5G, Huawei. If we can stop Huawei, and I think the government is very serious about ensuring that there is no compromise on India's security interests, I think we could send the right signals. And I think what is very important is if we send the signals, many other countries would also follow suit. And that is what is very, very important. And on 5G, of course, you would see that the US, UK, Singapore, and others have also moved forward before India, of course, has even brought 5G into play. And now one of the questions which people ask is, would WTO pose an obstacle? And it would not, because we are not a party to the WTO plurilateral agreement on government contracts procurement. We are not a party to the Information Technology Agreement 2, or indeed the e-commerce negotiations. And last but not least, China is still not considered as a non-market economy because it is considered a non-market economy because, and that allows us to bring in anti-dumping duties and other tariff measures. So I think there's very little which the WTO would pose a threat to us or would be a problem for us. Of course, we would have to look at coordinate our activities also with other countries. We have seen the Quad being strengthened further, and we might bring in Australia into the Malabar exercise. We would, of course, have strong partners in the United Nations Security Council through France, United States, and the UK. If China brings in Kashmir issue or others, then we have, of course, to develop our military and infrastructure, strengthen our economic. I think as I was introduced, Rotarian Sujata had mentioned that China, she quoted China's $14 trillion economy, strong militarily. But I would like to say, of course, China is very strong, but we can, pinpricks can always, an ant can always pose a danger to an elephant. Elephant can always pose a danger to the dragon through various means and methods. And most importantly, our military is strong enough in the sense it has experience of having fought battles. Our Air Force is very strong to counter the Chinese Air Force. The Rafale will be in India tomorrow. So I think we should not underestimate our military strength on the western or the eastern border. Of course, there's always the question, don't underestimate your adversary's strength, nor overestimate your ally's strength. I think that's a very important point. We need to consider that. And I think at the same time, I'm sure our military would be looking at various options, doing various battle exercises to ensure that even though this time perhaps we might have been taken by surprise because of COVID and other things, we would not be found sleeping the second time. And we'll, of course, continue to keep our powder dry. And at the same time, Karl von Clausewitz had said that you maximize benefits and minimize risks for your country. We should maximize risks for your enemy and minimize benefits for him. So I think that should be the most important thing which we should look at. I think I've spoken for 27 minutes and 45 seconds. I think I'll leave it here and maybe wait for questions. I think that would be more interesting than me sort of hogging the limelight for nearly 30 minutes. Thank you very much. And I'm open to questions and we can move on. Thank you very much.
Sujesh, can I go ahead and ask some questions? Hello.
I think that was truly informative, Ambassador Ganapathi. It was truly informative. And I think I've also read somewhere that you know some Russian languages and some Bulgarian languages as well. Why did you say something for us?
Oh, good. I think, yes, I think on the India-Russian relationship, unless...
the language that you speak, I heard you speak very well.
No, not very well. Of course, я только говорю чуть-чуть по-русскому языку.
Anything will be fine.
Yeah, because basically what I said is, my Russian would have gone rusty, but I practice it with the Russian diplomats in Chennai, and I find that it comes out. One thing of any language is you have to think in that language. That is the most important thing. If you think English or Tamil and speak Russian, you will not be able to do anything. Like I'll tell you one important thing. When I was in Delhi as a probationer, there used to be in those days a thing called the House of Soviet Culture. Now it's House of Russian Culture. So before going, I said, let me try to pick up some Russian from them. And when I went to Moscow, I had to unlearn everything I learned because I had the wrong pronunciation, I had the wrong idiom phrases. So I picked it up there and I said, no, I will speak Russian as the Russians would do. And, through newspapers, that's how it is done. So I'll put it this way. But one of the important things, when you mentioned Russian, many would ask, would Russia be a dependent partner now? I would say I would continue to maintain Russia would be a dependent partner. I would continue to trust the Russians. And I'll tell you two important things. One of the things was when we conducted our nuclear tests in 1998, there was President Yeltsin was very disappointed with us. And he said, in one of the telephone calls, he sort of said, banging his table, that India padval minne, that is, India let me down. But the Russian military said, well done, continue on, we are with you. On the China aspect, as I mentioned, Khrushchev, there was a conversation between Khrushchev, Mao, and his leadership in Beijing in 1959. And on October 15, 1962, Khrushchev, in a farewell speech to the Chinese ambassador, said that we will not sell MiGs to India. And as you all know, the war broke out with China just a week thereafter. The reason why Khrushchev said that, credit of a doubt, so to say, was he had his problems with the Bay of Pigs. And he didn't broke out. The Soviet Union was very strongly with us. We signed the treaty in 1971 with the Soviet Union, and Article 9 of the treaty said that countries will get in close coordination with each one of them face the threat and take appropriate measures to get rid of the threat. Of course, that article is no longer there in the 1993. In the Kargil War, I was Joint Secretary East Europe handling Russia, and I can tell you that Russia rushed us all the arms and equipment as we needed immediately. As we asked, the next flight, it was on there. And would Russia side with China now? Because they have a strategic partnership, because Russia faces problems with the West, China faces problems with the West. I would say that Russia would be neutral, and there have been reports that some of the Russian generals have not been happy with China reverse engineering many of their equipments, because Russia would not like to be seen as a junior partner of the Chinese. And of course, that is where China sees itself as the only superpower now, because it feels that America is withdrawing. But I would say that don't be fooled to think that America would be militarily and financially weak. They would continue to be militarily and financially strong.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sir, I'm Ranjit Joseph, Rotarian. Ambassador, could you hear me?
Yes, yes,
yeah,
indeed.
See, Ambassador, see, one thing about India over the years, in the last 60, 70 years of our existence, we have not been very friendly with our neighbors. You take any of our neighbors, and in fact, we have indulged in wars or mini supporting terrorism in neighboring countries. I don't want to name them. So it is generally understood that we have to keep neighbors happy, whether you are staying in an apartment or whether you are you are running a country. What's your opinion? Why this is happening to India? Why it has happened to India?
I think there's a very interesting point, Mr. Joseph. I think a country as large as India, is always viewed as a big brother by each one of its neighbors. I think if you look at it from the other side, I think you also notice that many of our neighbors also have been keen to play off some of our adversaries against us. I mean, you take Nepal right now. The problem has been, if you look at the border issue, I'll just spend a couple of minutes on Nepal and go with all the other neighbors. The border issue was more or less settled, because even after India became independent and in the 1950 treaty between India and Nepal, the border was very clear that the Limpiodura, Kalapani and Lupulek areas would be in India. The map was very clear there. And it was also there in the redrawn treaty later in the 1990s. And there's been no change at all. And even, down the line, when the China-Nepal was drawn up, the Lupulek Pass was shown as being with India. I mean, one of the articles in that treaty is very clear that the border lies Lupulek Pass. So there is no question of that happening at all. I think this time, perhaps, there's been an internal problem in Nepal. And that is why I think Prime Minister Oli, whose sympathies and friendship lies more with China, because he's backed by China in the Communist Party, has been seen to be more pro-China than the traditional friendship which Nepal always has enjoyed with India. With Sri Lanka, of course, we had some difficulties with President Mahinda Rajapaksa, the previous one, wherein I think the Hambantota and other things. Of course, I should say one important point here. I would concede the fact that we have been rather slow in coming to decisions on supporting various activities with our neighbors, like Hambantota or infrastructure-related activities. I would say that we tie ourselves in knots, and that's why others jump in where we are very slow to respond. I think this is where the problem of Amman Rota. Of course, I don't bring in Pakistan because Pakistan has an issue of identity, and even if we settle the Kashmir issue, I think Pakistan never give up. I think it will continue to have a problem with India. And I think Kashmir, for all practical purposes, is a 647 because the instrument of accession was very clear. I think the Independence Act was very clear that there was no two way about it. It was India or Pakistan. And once the Maharaja acceded to India, that was it. And even the 1949 UNSC resolution was very clear. There were 3 points. One was withdrawal of all regulars and irregulars from Jammu and Kashmir by Pakistan, reversion of the administration to India, and third was the plebiscite. Now, Pakistan did not withdraw. It settled its Punjabi population in Jammu and Kashmir, and there was no question of the third thing happened. So we had elections continuously, and it has been Indian territory. Bhutan, there's been no problem. Bangladesh, again, there's been a problem with the Bangladesh National League, Bangladesh Nationalist Party, and not with the Awami League. I think you draw some comments from the recent article by Kalol, I think in the Hindu, which came up saying that Riva Ganguly Das has not been able to see Sheikh Hasina. But I think I'll disabuse the article of its idea that Bangladesh is drifting away from India. I don't think that's correct at all. And with Maldives, I think the problem was there with, I think with the previous president, Yamin Abdullah, who again went towards China. In fact, when the problem took place in Maldives, when Nasheed resigned, President Nasheed resigned, I was sent by Prime Minister Manmohan Singh as a special envoy to Maldives. And in my discussions, of course, Mr. Nasheed wanted Indian Army to move in. And we had said that, on our consultations with both the speaker and with the parliament and everyone, we were very clear that what had happened was through a constitutional provision. So we could not do it. So I think, yes, the problem of the big brother syndrome will always continue to be there. But I think we have, of course, continued to discuss our bilateral relations with all our neighbors to the best extent possible. And we hope that the neighbors would also not step into an adversarial relationship through bringing in our adversaries and trying to keep the pot boiling in terms of our relations with them. It is a difficult thing for any big neighbor. You take USA, you take China, or you take countries in Africa. There are always problems of a big country having problems with, as we have 7 neighbors, except Bhutan, where we have never had problems. But each of the others, the relationship is on an even keel to the best extent.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you.
Pari, over to you. I'll put the spotlight for you.
Yeah. Yeah, sir, good evening, sir. This is Pari Sridhatan from Rotary Club of Royapettah. Thanks for your wonderful insights into this latest topic, sir. Sir, I have 2 questions for you. My first question is, see, China almost have which is sharing the borders with it. So, but these countries are the biggest market for them economically, and we can very well see that many parts we are still receiving all these countries from China. So this is a very biggest market for them, but still why they want to strain relationship with all countries whom share border with them? That is my first question, sir. And my second question is, I also read from various articles that China is constructing many dams across its rivers so that actually the rivers originating from China goes into 18 countries. So I heard that there's a big plan that to stop all this water and divert this water and have a full control over all the rivers which is being shared by other 18 countries. So what's your view on this, sir? These are my 2 questions, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Rotin Pari. I think very important question. China has land borders with 14 countries. I would say 13 countries only, because one of the borders is with Pakistan through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. But it has settled its, it has got boundary agreements with all its other countries, that is Mongolia, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Pakistan definitely, Afghanistan, Nepal, Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Myanmar. Of course, two of the countries with which it has not signed a boundary agreement are with India and Bhutan. It has problems. It has maritime boundaries with 7 countries and Taiwan. And with each of these 7 countries, it has a problem. Despite, when Vietnam became independent, when China became the People's Republic of China in 1949, it drew a 11-dashed line on the maritime border, but it became 9-dashed line when it gave away 2 of its islands to Vietnam in the Gulf of Tonkin. But with each of the other countries, it has a serious problem on the maritime boundary. And what is very, very interesting from an international law perspective, you would all recall that in 2016, the Philippines went to the International Tribunal of the Law of the Sea to protest against China building infrastructure in the Scarborough Shoals. And the ITLOS, as it's called, the International Tribunal, gave its verdict in favor of Philippines. But China said, no, we don't recognize that. So a commentator said, international law is powerful against the powerless and powerless against the powerful. So that's where you are. Even on Hong Kong, many commentators said that China is supposed to give a 50-year, respect the Sino-British agreement for 50 years. But one of the Chinese leaders said, this agreement is not worth the word which is printed on paper, it's fit for the dustbin. So, that's how China respects international treaties and its obligations. It's a bull in a China shop, and China is, I think, wordplay, so to say, there, or it's a dragon in a China shop, or whatever you want to say. So I think China does not respect its international legal obligations, even though it says that it respects the rule of law everywhere. In fact, even on the border, China says that it is all for peace, it's all for tranquility, it respects international law, and that it respects its obligations, but it is the biggest violator of all its obligations. On the dams, yes, this is a major issue. On the Mekong, it's constructed 7 dams, and it shares the Mekong River with Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand. So all the downstream countries will face problems if the dams are gone. Of course, there have been issues on the Brahmaputra, which China calls Sangpo in Tibet. And we continue to monitor the problems. It could be a major issue in the future. Of course, we have a bilateral agreement where China is supposed to give us the water flow position to us, and they share some of the data there. But it is not to full satisfaction, so to say. So the downstream countries always will have problems. And as long as China is a permanent member of the UN Security Council, we will always have a problem with this big country which has no respect for international law and order. Talking of the UN Security Council, we'll become a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council next year in the term of 2021-22. China is the only permanent member which has not supported us for a membership of the permanent membership of the UN Security Council. It has not supported our membership of the Nuclear Supplies Group, even though all the other countries have supported it and also supported us. We are members of the other 3 non-proliferation regimes. China does not support us on our anti-terrorism approach towards Pakistan. So I think not only other countries, but we face the biggest problem because we have a border of around 4,000 kilometers with China on the line of actual control. So many would say that why don't you do forget China, but we can't do like many others do. Many others will sit far away and say, okay, but we have a problem because it's our immediate neighbor. So we would continue to have to strengthen our economy, strengthen our military, strengthen our infrastructure, and continue to keep our powder dry so that we continue to maintain that the status quo ante has to be done. One of the most important points which I did not mention or forgot to mention was, we asked China, repeatedly asked them, let us sit and see where the line of actual control lies. We are ready with strip maps. You delineate areas on a map. These are called strip maps, small areas. But China is not even ready to share these strip maps with us. So we don't know what the Chinese, we are ready to share, we have given them the maps, they are not ready to show the maps to us. So that is where the problem lies, except in a small part in the middle sector, which is on the Himachal-Uttarakhand border. The borders in Ladakh, Jammu and Kashmir, and on the eastern sector are undemarcated. Because it's a three segment. First, we have to agree where it is, then we have to demarcate it, and then set up boundary pillars. Sorry, I added a little more to the questions you asked.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Over to you, Rotarian Subramanian, sir.
Mr. Ganapathi, Nehru had Indo-China bye-bye, and recently Modi had a grand meeting and friendship with Jinping. Now, this is the history now. And we have been helping them with regard to their economy by getting into the trade pact and trade understanding everything. So to that extent, we have also been giving them support. This is the history again. Unfortunately, all along this has happened, right, for the last about 70 years, yet we have seen that they are stabbing us in the back. That's what is happening repeatedly. Now, the question is, are we not having a good bureaucrats in the government or somebody, except of course we have seen the letter of this thing, Mr. Patel. He had warned Nehru about this particular danger, looming danger about China. He very clearly warned that we should never depend and rely upon China. But why we have not learned that lesson? I mean, should have been told by leaders, or in fact even the government officials. Nobody has really, taken that sort of line of thinking and said that we'll strengthen all respects. In the last about 30 years, we should have strengthened our army or whatever it is, because our army has contributed greatly, even in World War, for saving the world from Hitler. Our army has supported it very, very greatly. So that is a potential. Why we have not done anything in the last about even 25 years to strengthen our army? That's the question.
Thank you very much, Sir Rotarian Subramanian. I think there's a very important question which you have pointed out. I think what does happen is, in many cases, like Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru in the heyday of independence, immediately after independence, believed in the importance of having personal relationship with various leaders. Like before China became the People's Republic of China, he had excellent relationship with Chiang Kai-shek, and even Sun Yat-sen before that in the Geneva conference, and then Chiang Kai-shek. And then he thought that he would have an equally good relationship with Chairman Mao and Premier Zhou Enlai. China, for all practical purposes, does not believe in personal equations. It believes in enlightened self-interest, and that is what we should have done. Prime Minister Modi also, unfortunately, thought that having a very good equation with Xi Jinping would be good for India. And that is why, after Doklam, he went to Wuhan for the informal summit in April 2018. And he invited President Xi Jinping to Mamallapuram in October 2019. And I think if you saw the body language of President Xi, there was no warmth, there was no reciprocity. It was wooden, so to say. But that is how President Xi has always been. He's cold, calculative, and that is what he's done within China, and that is what he's been doing to leaders all around the world. So the bye-bye thing, which you said of the 1950s onwards, is today bye-bye. It is BHAI to BYE. And that is why I think our leaders have rightly understood the importance of developing infrastructure. That is why over the last 3-4 years, if you notice, the 200-odd kilometer Darbuk Shyok Daulat Beg Oldie road has been laid on. The airport at Daulat Beg Oldie has been improved, so to say, to take in heavy aircraft, the C-19 Starlifters and all those things. In the Arunachal area, bridges are being built. The government has now said that there is no going back on developing infrastructure in the border areas, because China has built infrastructure to great extent on its side of the line of actual control. In fact, it moved the Johnson line and to the MacArthur-McDonnell line to protect its Xinjiang Tibet road, which is called Highway 219. And it built infrastructure right up to the Chumbi Valley in Doklam. It has built parallel roads coming from Lhasa, from other areas towards the Indian border. And we should not have kept quiet. We should have also developed infrastructure. In fact, people say that one of the reasons for this particular war was China wanted to send us a message that don't develop infrastructure. China has one philosophy for itself and another philosophy for others. It believes that what it does is right, what it says is truth, and what others do is wrong, and what others say is a pack of lies. So I think Chinese hypocrisy is very much there, and that is what we should do. There is a Russian proverb, in fact, Rotarian Sujata asked me, it says, "Doverii no proverii." That means trust but verify. In fact, in the Hindu, one of our former ambassadors, Ambassador Ganapathi M had written that Mrs. Gandhi had said, she said, "I don't trust China, maybe I might even trust Pakistan." And when she was told trust but verify, she said, "Trust but verify, but don't trust them still." So I think that is the most appropriate thing which we should look at. And now I think we have given enough funds to go towards strengthening the army, strengthening the infrastructure, and Atmanirbharta for the economy. I think if you don't share your source codes on information technology, we would not do it. You know, there's another aspect of Chinese warfare, which is psychological warfare, which is information warfare, which is legal warfare, and then the hot war. You know, in the communist system, there's a thing called agitprop, agitation and propaganda. And that is what China is good at, communists are good at.
Thank you.
Over to you, Sujesh.
Yeah, this is Sujesh. My mic is not working, so I'm coming from a digital system. I have two questions to you. Before that, they say it is easiest to be a communist in a democratic country and not so to be in a communist country. And see, systematically, I think we have lost Sri Lanka first as our friendly country, and now even Nepal. We have lost our relationships with them. And the tactical understanding we had in developing the Chabahar port also has run into deep waters now. That is my first question. So how do we come out of the situation? And the second question is, why did we allow China to come and dump in our markets cheap things like even plastic buckets, brooms, incense sticks? All these could have been stopped by the Indian government because these can be easily produced in the local industry.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rotarian Sujesh. I think very important point, Mr. President. I think what you said is right. It's easy to be a communist in a democracy, and it's difficult for somebody to be a Democrat in a communist country. And that's why you see a lot of Xi's opponents or those who have been critical of Xi being either jailed or banished and things like that, you know. And they brook no criticism, no interference, and it's gulag for them. I don't think it will be perhaps too simplistic to say that we have lost Sri Lanka and Nepal, because for all practical purposes, despite the difficulties we have with Prime Minister Oli and his statements, I think the Nepalese leaders have talked of, the foreign minister had talked that we cannot ignore India because India is our important neighbor and our important partner. So I think what has happened after the issue of the map, which Nepal brought in, and all those statements, we have had diplomats talk to each other. Our ambassador in Kathmandu has been talking to the chancelleries in Kathmandu, and South Bloc has been talking to the Nepalese ambassador there. So I think it takes time, you know, sometimes countries, like, people also get hot under the collar when they perceive or are provoked to perceive certain things which they feel is inimical to their interests. Similarly on Sri Lanka, if you recall, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa made India his first port of call. And also Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa had come to India after being appointed as the Prime Minister. And there have been discussions going on. Of course, one of the reasons which I mentioned is we are perhaps slow to respond to the various requests from many of our friendly countries. I think that's where I think our finance ministry has to be more proactive in loosening the purse strings. It's also very difficult. We are not a developing country. We are not a developed country. We ourselves have a major budget deficit. We have problems to address within our own country to alleviate poverty, to take care of COVID recently, and to also uplift our own economy. So I think within these parameters, we have to look at all these issues. And in fact, it was heartwarming to see African leader just say the other day that everyone talks of US, China in terms of Africa, but everyone forgets that the quiet winner in Africa is India, which has been building up capacity and not extracting and exploiting our resources. On Chabahar, it's a very important point. Just 2 days ago, today is the 29th, on the 27th, the spokesman of the External Affairs Ministry has drawn attention of the media to the statement of the Iranian railway minister and an Iranian official who have said that what has appeared in the media is wrong, and Indian railways are very much there. The contracts has not been annulled, and our ambassador said that Chabahar continues on. So I think, that's what I said. I think Mr. Madhu was very right when I quoted him initially. He has written, of course, basically he has forwarded Shekhar Gupta's article on the recent actor, Sushant Singh, where he said, a doctor is asked by a patient when the coronavirus and when. The doctor said, I don't know, please ask journalists. So I think that's what I said. Everyone today is an analyst, everyone is a commentator, everybody is a critic, everybody knows everything. But it's the diplomat or the bureaucrat or the government who doesn't know. So I think when we know, we say. So when somebody asks, is Indian territory occupied? What has happened there? I would try to wait for our Jawans on ground, our commanders on ground, our diplomats on field to tell us, then rush to the news, So I think on the second point on dumping, which you said, yes, it is a major issue. But I think once you have the bilateral agreement and once China became a WTO member, even before granting market economy access, I think everyone found it's easy to buy Chinese goods. So I think when you have a liberalized economy, when China became a WTO member in 2001, everyone thought markets are open for China to come in. And of course, and the traders will always find it easy to go to the lowest bidder and the lowest seller. In fact, Kanchan Gupta, who was in Prime Minister Vajpayee's office, has recently said that the duties on bamboo were reduced from 40% to 0 and has now been brought to 25%. Why not make it 40% so that our bamboo makers can sell this, the bamboo stick for the agarbattis? And why should we buy Kamadhenu? I went to one of our Air Force officers in Mauritius where I was posted, and he said the Kamadhenu is made in China. I think it's a shame that a non-believing country should export Kamadhenu and Lord Krishna to a believing country, so to say. So I think we are on the right track now. I'm sure we'll be working on the mechanism. But at the same time, I should also mention that whereas we have deficit trade, a negative trade turnover with one of the countries, we always have positive with another country. Today, USA is the #1 trading partner with us. China is #2. With USA, we have $87 billion trade turnover in 2019-20. With China, it was $81 billion. And with the USA, we have a trade surplus of over $30 billion. So I think in the overall trade figures, you have negative balance with one country, positive balance with other countries. So overall, it balances out. But in the case of China, since this country is inimical to our national interest and in our enlightened national self-interest, we should definitely bring in various mechanisms where we try to reduce the trade deficit by, like what we did of the 107 apps, by bringing in other things on infrastructure, on information technology, on the power sector, to ensure that not only is the deficit brought down, but also our security is guaranteed.
Over to you, Rotarian Ganesh.
So good evening, sir. I have a question. A lot of financial newspapers are mentioning that India will be the beneficiary of the Chinese relationship with other countries. For example, take for example, US imports more than 500 billion, if I'm right, and it exports more than 100 billion. Likewise, European countries and other countries have a deficit with China. How much do you think will come to India? And are we capable of matching the Chinese industries?
Well, I think the first part of the question is hypothetical. It will be very difficult to point a figure because, as you rightly said, Rotarian Ganesh, the overall Sino-US trade is of the order of over $500 billion. But more importantly than the trade factor, it is the investment factor. How much of the investment, if it moves out of China, can we bring in? I think for that, the most important point is, without getting into figures, is we need to deregulate significantly to make our market more attractive, which we have done, of course. In the ease of doing business, we have moved from around the 140s to in the lower hundreds and even just below 100, so to say. So that is an important, very, very important point. So I think you would have also read 2 days ago, our Commerce Minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal, saying that Apple is going to manufacture the iPhone 11 not far from Chennai. So if that happens slowly, I think definitely, I'm sure we would be able to move ahead in attracting more investment and also more of a trading partner coming towards India. Of course, we need to develop our industries to the extent that China has developed. We need to have a bureaucracy with greater friendliness, because I have heard people say that when somebody went to China, the leaders were there. If they said 8 o'clock was their meeting, at 7:55 sharp, they were at the gate to receive the visitors, so to say. At 8 sharp, the meeting began. And down the line, as they progressed, whatever you wanted was given to them. Will we be able to do that? We have to look at it more seriously from a point of view of our executive decisions, from the point of view of our judicial decisions, societal issues itself. So I think we need to look at all that, and we need the industry and the government to work together to see that we are able to open the doors to a great extent to attract both investment and trade opportunities to the significant extent which will move away from China.
Over to you, Ram. Ram, your question. Go ahead, please. I'll ask his question. His question is it possible to unseat China from UNSC, United Nations Security Council?
I think Rotarian Ram's question, I think, is absolutely impossible, if I can put it that way. Because to have a country unseated from the United Nations Security Council, you will need an amendment of the Charter, United Nations Charter. And to amend the Charter, in the United Nations Security Council, for any vote to carry, you need 9 positive votes with no veto power. So if you have 9 positive votes and no veto, that is, if the other 6, there is no veto, then you're through. But will China not veto its own membership, permanent membership? It will not. So obviously, as I said, that's absolutely impossible. Now, even for India to become a permanent member of the Security Council, it will need an amendment of the Charter. And in 1950s, when both the US and the Russians or the Soviets informally broached this topic to us, not formally, I think there was no mention by both of them of the looking at of the amendment of the UN Charter. So without amendment of the UN Charter, it's absolutely impossible to evict one of the permanent members, or for that matter, add a new permanent member. And let's hope, I mean, I always say that I'll be very happy that if in my lifetime, I'm able to see India as a permanent member of the UN Security Council, I'll be the happiest person.
We have one more question from Rotarian.
It's not a very, very positive note, but it's a somber thing, but that is the position, unfortunately. As I said, international law is powerful against the powerless and powerless against the powerful.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Ganapathi. We have two more questions. The first one is it true that China has full control over Indus River? That's from Rotarian Bala.
Not really, if you look at it. I think because the Indus River is, Rotarian Bala has asked, it originates in the Indian part of Jammu and Kashmir, and within the Ladakh area, which is very much under Indian control. So I think we don't need to worry about the Indus River. It will be more the Brahmaputra which will be a problem. But I think one of the issues which we were looking at was China trying in the long run. They said it will dam Galwan, it will dam Shyok, and if those things happen, you don't know how it will be in the long run. So that's why we need to put boots on the ground to ensure that China first doesn't do any more salami slicing or mission creep forward, and two, that we push them back to where they were before June, and we have the boundary or the line of actual control settle into a boundary. The third may be very difficult in the long run. We'll have to keep on pressing the Chinese.
Thank you, Ambassador Ganapathi. I have just one last question. That's from me. It's based on a book by a person by name Michael Pillsbury. It's called The 100-Year Marathon. It's the 100 years strategy document written by China on how to be the world superpower compared to US. Now, looking at it purely from a trade perspective, are we moving strategically? We are moving, at least from a perception standpoint, we are moving closely to US from a trade standpoint. But when you look at the US preferential treatment, they're not giving us that. Would it make sense? I'm playing a devil's advocate here. Would it make more sense to strategically align with China and then be a huge Asian power bloc, which will challenge the world and be done away with all the border issues and so many other pricking issues that are currently happening?
That is a very, very important question. First, I think I'll start with the US. I don't think we should be in alliance with any country, because any country for that matter, if you go into an alliance, the expectations become too much. So it's better to be a strategic partner rather than an ally, because the requirements or the responsibilities of the European countries in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization is far more than what would be for India as a strategic partner, because we are what the US calls we are a strategic defense partner. We get the same priorities as a NATO country would get in terms of defense and other requirements. We have the trade and defense partnership with the US. So I think an alliance would be a no-no thing. Secondly, I think we have excellent relations with France, the UK, US, Japan, to put it that way, now Australia, the African countries, UK, and Russia, definitely. So I think we would continue to be more better placed and better served in the position that we are currently. On the question of alliance with China, this was what was tried by Pandit Nehru in 1947 April, when he had the first Asian Relations Conference, when India was not yet independent, when China was still with Chiang Kai-shek. It was the Republic of China. And even if you recollect, Deng Xiaoping and others had said, this is going to be the Asian century when India and China would be important countries. How much do I trust the Chinese on this? Absolutely not. Because China would never like to see any other country as its equal. That is the most important point. And that is why, if you looked at what Li Shaoqi told Felix Bandaranaike in 1963, was we wanted to have Nehru's arrogance and illusions of grandeur to the front, and we wanted to teach him a lesson. And Pandit Nehru was very keen that Asia would be served well by India and China being partners, and that Asia should be led by India and China. And China will never countenance or accept anyone as its equal because it sees it drawing power from Tianjia, as I said, under heaven, one. And two, it sees itself as being in the head of the middle kingdom. So obviously, definitely it's a no-go area. And that is why I think it always talks of teaching India a lesson. That is, who would teach an equal a lesson? It would say, let us go together or work together. So I think never trust but verify. Maybe I would go with Mrs. Gandhi perhaps in that. So I think I would perhaps be very, very wary of what you have been advocating, Dr. Suresh. I think no, perhaps. We would have to develop our strength individually and internally to be, I mean, okay, even if we are not equal of China, let us stand on our own footing and show that we would be able to face any adversary and give our adversary a lesson which he would never forget. And that's what Dokulam was all about.
Thank you so much.
And maybe Galwan also, you know, one of the reasons why perhaps people say China is not indicating its figures, all the Chinese media had said that India was a loser. But one weak argument had come up that China had also lost. It's not even allowing people to show coffins being buried, and none of the relatives have been able to claim the bodies of their next of kin.
We have one. I'm sorry to pull it a little longer. We have one
No
last
problem.
question from Dr. Jayanti of Spotlight. Go ahead, Jayanti. Her question is, with the cold feeling that COVID is after all a bio war by China, do you think the medical fraternities should skip their apprehension and go ahead with using the vaccine made in China?
I think I'll put it this way. Yes, the vaccine emanated from Wuhan in China. And the WHO also did not cooperate in declaring a pandemic earlier as it should have done. But I think my own feeling is, there was a very interesting comment by Thomas Friedman who said that China should not, China's mask diplomacy is unmasked by its its big power diplomacy. But when it comes to enlightened self-interest, if you feel that a vaccine helps you in the long run, I would not hesitate to use Chinese-made vaccines, even if it comes to that, because ultimately, if it helps your population and if China is ready to give it without any other strings attached in terms of saying, or the border or any other thing, why not? I think maybe it may come through WU or it may come through bilateral arrangements, no problem at all there. If it helps your population, fine. I think we need to combat this this pandemic very, very seriously. And if you get medicines or vaccines or any other thing from anywhere, it has to be, of course, not as bad. It shouldn't be as bad as its PPE equipments. If it is good, go ahead.
So I just want to ask one question. Sorry to interrupt. How long do you think this pandemic is going to last? I think this question everybody will be asking everyone. So I think you'll be the best person to answer to that, and just be honest.
Definitely
I think
not.
he's not a journalist.
I think, yeah, one is you should ask Dr. Jayanti, who's a doctor. And
Okay.
as I started with the first thing, when a patient asked his doctor, he said, ask the journalist. Definitely, I don't know. I would be very happy if it ends tomorrow, because I would like to start moving around, meeting my friends, going to visit my relatives, maybe going to Delhi and not having a 14-day quarantine. I think that is what is helpful. But nobody can say when it will end. All the doctors, Dr. Fauci, who's in the forefront in the USA, whom we see every day on various Indian channels, or any epidemiologists, they've all been saying we can't put a finger on when this will end, when the vaccine will come. Maybe when the vaccine comes, the numbers will go down. But I think till then, we have to have our masks and social distancing and pray to God that it helps us and there's no more zoonotics anywhere else.
Sorry to
Thank you so
interrupt.
much.
Very, very sorry to interrupt. I know today has been a very long meeting because the subject was very interesting and he has been very patient in answering all the questions. But before we go to the final part, I'd like Kalyan, who is a member in waiting for our club. He's one among the board of directors in Nokia. I think he can throw some light on the manufacturing of Apple phones in Chennai. Kalyan, quickly, please.
So what do you exactly want to know about Apple?
No, is it true? And when are we going to see the reports
it is
coming
true.
out here?
Yeah, it is true.
And what
and
will be the volumes?
It is true. They already started productionizing about 11 months before. Actually, this COVID has elongated the start of the manufacturing. Otherwise, they would have started the manufacturing from April. It's true.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Over to you, Reggie.
Thanks. Sir, can I have one question?
Reggie, you have to unmute yourself. Reggie, you have to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry.
Is Chinese military managers have troubles and troubled relationship with political leadership there? More similar to Pakistan, where the military leaders are more powerful and they never want to listen to or draw parallel with them, something like that?
I think it's it's very interesting thing. It's a reverse of what is happening in Pakistan. In Pakistan, you have a civilian leadership which is totally beholden to the military. If General Bajwa says something, Imran Khan runs and listens to him. Whereas in China, there is in a communist country, if you have the military with you and you give the best to the military, I think they are not going to revolt at all. In fact, Xi Jinping, that's why he's the chairman of the Central Military Commission, and the military reports to him. So obviously, he is the #1 leader with the military under his command. It's not the other way around like in Pakistan, and we won't see a coup in China at all. And that has been right from 1917, when the Bolsheviks overthrew the Tsarist regime in Russia, and the Soviets came in. Lenin was there for a short while, then Stalin was there till 1953, then Khrushchev, Brezhnev, Chernenko, Andropov, Yeltsin, I think Gorbachev, Yeltsin. There was no military coup. In fact, I think the military was totally with the leadership. And one of the military leaders always is in the Politburo. So he is in the decision-making authority, so to say. And they give them full freedom. And that is what freedom is given to the 5th military district of China, which includes Xinjiang and Tibet. And he is the most powerful guy there. And I think President Xi, I think there was a rumor in April that perhaps China would try to take over Taiwan. But the military advised the leadership that this is not the right time. And even now, I think the leadership has been advising the military, be very careful in what you do. But very important point, which was told to me by a Russian diplomat in 1996, I think 6 or 7, when he said, in terms of China-India relations, it is the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, which calls the shots, and the leadership listens to them. And that explains the entire context in which, despite having 2 informal summits in Wuhan and in Mamallapuram, you still have Galwan and all the other areas.
Thank you, Ambassador Ganapathi, for giving us a complete perspective of the situation, as well as patiently answering each of our questions and taking time to help us understand the complete background. Without much further ado, Sujesh, can I move over to the vote of thanks? Okay. I consider it a great privilege to propose a vote of thanks. First and foremost, I'm sorry, let me spotlight. First and foremost, our gratitude to Rotarian Sujesh for the initiative and extending arms to Spotlight and Royapettah clubs to participate and benefit from this session. Special recognition to Rotarian Madhu of Madras South, who played a key role in bringing the best person to deliver this address. My gratitude to Rotarian Jayanti, President of Chennai Spotlight, for the 4-way test. Thank you, Rotarian Sujata Panju, for introducing a distinguished speaker and also setting the tone on what to expect. More than a Rotarian, I listen keenly to Ambassador Ganapathi's perspective, more as an Indian government's technical liaison of Caterpillar, an organization which imports equipments, parts from China, and watching this development very closely on how the entire thing will pan out in the future. He truly did not disappoint me by structuring his speech into 4 parts to give us a complete perspective of the developments and what to expect in the near future. as normal, simple folks, we are privy to views of only news channels who give us their perspective. Thank you, Ambassador Ganapathi, for giving us a holistic background and, more importantly, a sneak peek into the minds of our political leaders and bureaucrats, two pillars of our democracy. That's something which which is a rare thing for simple people like us. Really appreciate all the hard work you put in to help us understand the complete details. Lastly, heartfelt gratitude to all members of Madras South, Spotlight and Royapettah, and guests who dialed in and listened keenly to our distinguished speaker. In case I missed thanking any one of you, please blame it on my aging gray cells. Over to you, Sajesh.
Thank you, Reggie.
Yeah, so we can adjourn the meeting. This joint meeting of the Rotary Club of Madras South, the Rotary Club of Royapettah, and the Rotary Club of Chennai Spotlight is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we can continue. Those who want to stay back can continue, and those who want to leave are always.
May I say goodbye to everybody? Thank you very much for having me over.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot. We hope the COVID situation improves drastically and we are able to face.
Take care and stay safe, every one of you, all of you.
Thank you, sir.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ambassador Madhusudan Ganapathi, sir. Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Indeed, a lovely, lovely speaking meet. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all the clubs also. Thank you,
you.
Gently, for calling all of us. Really, really thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sujata.
Spotlight thanks you. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Sujit. And thank you, Reggie.
Jayati,